Welcome, grade 9. This is course 5 based on factorising. And the first lesson will be the summaries that I explained to you. So you will be able to download the summaries, and I always say print it out and keep it in a file. Right. So I'm going to go through the summaries with you just so that you understand my methods. Right. So when I do factorising, I always tell my pupils, you must analyze to see which of the 4 basic concepts you can apply. You can either look for something common, which must always be number 1 in your brain. Number 2, difference between 2 squares, trinomial or grouping. So let me explain this further. You always start off by looking for the highest common factor, or it could be a highest common bracket. Number 2, if you see a square, so a square is when you see a number with a 2 as the exponent. That's a squared number. It could also be like the 16, which you can break down into 4 to the power of 2. So I just want to make sure you understand the difference between the square root, that's the square root, and if I write something like 4 to the power of 2, that means it's a squared number. So that's a squared number. Right, number 3, a trinomial. Tri means 3. So if you see 3 terms, it could be a possible trinomial. And if there are more than 3 terms, you try to group them to get a common bracket. So I just want to show you one example. If you see more than 3 terms, I'm just giving you a very simple example. This would be like a level 4 question, right? So if you see more than 3 terms, but the question says that you must factorize, you try and group 2 and 2 together. So I can take out a 2 there, and then I will be able to have a common bracket. So that you recognize, as I said, if you see more than 3 terms. So if I take out a common bracket, this would be a 1 plus 2. That will remain, and I can write it like this. You can't do difference between 2 squares there because that's a plus. If it was a minus, you could apply difference between 2 squares. Now, the first thing that's very important to remember with something common is that you always think, you visualize that you divide with whatever is common. So here I'm just explaining it. You don't need to write it like this. This is just what must go on in your brain. So the 4 is common, so I actually divide with the 4. So because it's common, I take it out. A trinomial means that you must work with the factors of the whole number, and you plus or minus the factors of 9 and try and get the middle term. So 9, I can either break up into 9 times 1, so I can say plus 9 minus 1. So if you had a plus 8 in the middle, you would have worked with this. If you have a negative 8 in the middle, you will work with negative 9 and plus 1. But I'm going to work with 3 and 3, and I'm going to minus them so that I can get a negative 6. Please remember the other little guideline here. If there's a plus at the end, the signs of the 2 brackets must be the same. Signs must be the same. It can either be a plus or a minus and a minus. In our example, it has to be a minus and a minus, so that that's a negative 6. If there is a minus at the end, the signs will differ. So the one will have a plus and the other one will have a minus. I don't give you the rule here to say which one will be the plus and the minus. I want you to work it out. So we'll look at the examples as we continue. There's a common bracket. You divide with x plus 2, so x minus 1 will remain. As I said with this, to take something out common. If you struggle to understand it, please do it like this on a piece of rough paper. I'll just do it once now. So because the 2 is common, we take it out, right? So I already did it there. So I'm going to show you how you then actually can do it on a piece of rough paper where you divide with 2x squared, y squared. So if you divide with that, 1 will remain. That's a 2 that falls away, and 1y will remain. So that's where you get that bracket. If you see a minus in front of your sum and you must factorize, always divide with a minus. You take out the negative. So if you divide this one, divide with a negative x, and you divide with a negative x, then the 1 will remain, and that becomes a plus x. So that's where that bracket comes from. Yeah, common bracket, x plus 3. So now I'm going to go very fast. This is difference between 2 squares. If you see a y 16, what we do with difference between 2 squares with the variables, you actually divide by 2. Just want to show you one example. So this normally you would write as x plus 2 and x minus 2. So what did you do with the exponent? You divided the exponent by 2. If it's a 16, it means you're going to divide the 16 by 2, which gives you the 8 there and the 8 there. 6 you divide by 2, so it's a 3, and that's 3. The trinomial again, negative 6, so it's negative 3 and negative 3. The 10 here, you have to work with 5 times 2. And because it's a plus 3, I have 5 minus 2 will give me a positive 3. Yeah, it's a fraction where you take out something. I took out the 4, took out the 2 down there, but then you have a problem. The order is not the same. So to get the right order, you divide with a negative, and then you can change one bracket only. Just want to show you how you divide with a negative. Let's say that was y minus x. So if I divide with a negative, the plus divided by negative is a negative, the plus y becomes a negative y, and the negative x becomes a plus x. So basically you just change the sign. If that was a plus, it would have become a negative. So if you wanted to swap that around, the negative would become a plus because you divide with a negative to swap it around. Plus becomes a negative, and the negative becomes a plus. Right, so here we just swap it around, then you cancel it out. Something common first, then difference between 2 squares. So very often you can apply 2 of the steps, right? Here you take something out common first, the 9, and then you apply difference between 2 squares. Here's a more complicated one. It's like difference between 2 squares on steroids. You get the square root of 9, which is 3 and 3, and then that bracket you split up, and the 49 will be a 7 and a 7. Then you just multiply in to simplify it. This one you take out something common first, and then it's a trinomial. Here you divide with a negative, you take it out, and then it becomes a trinomial. With this one, it's a fraction. So with a fraction, it's just like factorization on steroids. If it was a plus and a minus, you would have got the LP, but with multiplication, you just cancel out. I always love multiplication. Here you first factorize. So there you take out the 2. Down here, it's difference between 2 squares. There, because it's division, you swap it around into multiplication. X minus 2 goes to the top. Oh, and when it's fractions, you always put brackets around. And then it's the same thing. You just cancel out you have to take out a negative so that you can swap the order and then it cancels out. Right, I hope you understood. Please view the rest of the course.